like you, I was in high school and had access to this little studio at a Votech school, and just got the bug. I've always liked writing, creative writing, and then when I found out you could take words, write cool words, and then put cool pictures with them, and learned how to edit and stuff like that, I was like, wow, you make mini movies every day. That sounds pretty cool. So that's what got me into it. Excuse me, I'm just gonna have one little drink of water. Go ahead.
Where was your first journalism job?
So the way it works in our business is you go to small towns first, and then you try to get to bigger cities as you go. So I worked in a place in the middle of Washington that grew all the apple growing capital of the world, called Wenatchee, Washington, which is a town of about 40,000 people. Then I went to a place called Tri-Cities, Washington, had about 125,000 people. Then I went to Reno, which had about 250,000 people, and then down to Vegas. And it's grown from there.
You like Vegas?
I do, yeah. I've been here since '91, so that's what, 31 years now?
long-
32.
How long have you been working here?
So that's an interesting story too. I first came, I did the mornings here in the same studio, but it's been rebuilt several times since. I did the morning and the noon news. Then I went up to Seattle, which is the biggest place I've ever worked, and I did the morning news up in Seattle. Then I came back to Vegas to do the evenings, and that was 25 years ago. So this current job, we meet here just before the 11 o'clock news. I've been doing this every night for 25 years.
Looking back on it, what were your favorite stories? Like,
The favorite stories are always the ones for me that inspire people in some way, and that's one of the reasons I got into the business. Is there's so many people doing such great things out in the world, and when you find them and you're able to put their stories together and put them on TV, and it makes people feel a little bit better watching that, those are definitely my favorite, kinds of stories. Because there's a lot of crime and a lot of bad news too, but there are just so many good things happening in the world, and whenever we could point that out, those are my favorite stories.
if you could go back and tell your younger self any advice, what would it be?
We're getting deep here. Probably to take it easy in my earlier years. I get pretty worked up about things. We work in a stressful environment. Deadlines are deadlines. Yeah, the news is going to start here at 11. It can't start at 11:01. So stuff's got to be done, and it can make for a stressful environment. And I can get pretty worked up about things when they don't go right. And Mars, you be quiet over there. And hopefully, I've gotten a little mellower as the years have gone by and learned how to, handle things better. But probably to just enjoy it for sure, and then to maybe not take it quite as seriously.
Did you ever believe, like, when you were younger, that you would be doing something that, like, you loved so much?
No, I didn't. That's the only reason I went to college, is because I knew some people in Seattle who had worked in TV, and they told me I had to go to college. I didn't think I could ever get to college, let alone graduate college, let alone get my first job, let alone keep doing it for, it's 35 years I've been doing it now. So I go to schools sometimes and talk, to kids, and they go, well, I want your job, and it's easy. If I can do it, you can do it. You just need 30 years of your life and a lot of hard work, and some luck too, because in our business, like in a lot of different businesses where there's a creative side to it, there's there's a million ways to see something. Some people will like what you do, some people won't like what you do, and some of them are bosses who do hiring. So you have to stick with it, and if you do, I think along the way that it's a really rewarding career.
When you're working on a story, how much research does it go into?
A lot, hopefully a lot if you're doing it right. Starts off with just an idea, and then you try to find people who are involved in that story or whatever it is that you're working on, who can give you more information. And now that when I started, there was no internet, so now it's a lot easier. You can just sit there and you can research a lot about the subject and try to find out as much as you can before you then try to tell that story that night.
In your opinion, which has been more valuable to you, your education or your experience?
That's a great question. Well, now I'd say experience, because it's been such a big chunk of my life for 35 years, and there's a lot of things that you can't learn in a book. I was talking about the stressful and the deadlines and stuff. You you have to make mistakes to learn from them, and the only way to make mistakes is really outdoing it. So experience, the School of Hard Knocks, I guess, ends up being really important, but I would have never started without the education, so that played a role too.
Do you used to get nervous in front of the camera?
Yeah, I really did.
What's your mindset going into?
Well, you do anything for long enough, your dad could probably tell you that, you just, after a while, it just kind of becomes second nature, and the things that used to make you nervous about it are less so, just because you've done it so many times, I guess. But when I'm sitting out here, Danny, and I look at that camera, and then there's a lot going on my earpiece and 3 different cameras here, I try to forget about all that and just picture a person, your dad, you, mom, someone there. And I try to just act like I'm talking to one person, because if you start to think about all the people who might be watching, then for me, you get a little bit lost. It's easier just to tell it like you're telling it to a friend.
So as my dad was saying, when we were outside, like I'm part of SLAM, and they have like this thing called like CTE, which is like a career technical education.
Uh-huh.
And what I'm in is in video production. Did you have that when you were like?
We had a little bit of it at that vocational center, and I took some of those classes in college, but ours was kind of, if you wanted to be a director, studio crew, editor, you kind of went one way, and if you wanted to be a reporter, journalist, you went another way. So I didn't do a lot of that. We're just going to have to pause for a minute because I have to do one thing on TV, and then we'll continue. Okay. I went to a community college called Highline Community College in the Seattle area, and then I transferred as a junior to Washington State University, which I'm most proud of. And they have the Edward R. Murrow School of Communication there, which was a little before your time and even before your time, but Ed Murrow was the first big guy in TV, like before Walter Cronkite and Dan Rather and everything that followed him. So that's the school I went to.
Why did you decide to go to that college?
So I was in Washington, and we had the University of Washington and Washington State, and Washington State had this great program that had built around the tradition of this guy, and so it was really the place to go in Washington for broadcasting.
What was your major?
It was in communications, and then we had to have a specific area. Mine was broadcast journalism, then there were marketing people, advertising, things like that.
Well, in your opinion, what was the hardest thing about college?
Man, looking back now, it seemed like college was great in every way. It was an adjustment from high school for sure. That's why for me, I didn't have no one in my family had gone to college before, and I was a little bit intimidated by it. So community college for me was a perfect in between. Classes weren't that big, more one-on-one stuff. And then when I got to the university, sometimes you sit in a class and it's got a few hundred people in it. It's kind of intimidating, so that was a little bit tough. The studies, some of the subjects weren't my favorite, math and some of the sciences. I'm more of a liberal arts kind of guy, so probably the studies and just getting used to that kind of environment. I went to a community college called Highline Community College in the Seattle area, and then I transferred as a junior to Washington State University, which I'm most proud of. And they have the Edward R. Murrow School of Communication there, which was a little before your time and even before your time, but Ed Murrow was the first big guy in TV, like before Walter Cronkite and Dan Rather and everything that followed him. So that's the school I went to.
Why did you decide to go to that college?
So I was in Washington, and we had the University of Washington and Washington State, and Washington State had this great program that had built around the tradition of this guy, and so it was really the place to go in Washington for broadcasting.
What was your major?
It was in communications, and then we had to have a specific area. Mine was broadcast journalism, then there were marketing people, advertising, things like that.
Well, in your opinion, what was the hardest thing about college?
Man, looking back now, it seemed like college was great in every way. It was an adjustment from high school for sure. That's why for me, I didn't have no one in my family had gone to college before, and I was a little bit intimidated by it. So community college for me was a perfect in between. Classes weren't that big, more one-on-one stuff. And then when I got to the university, sometimes you sit in a class and it's got a few hundred people in it. It's kind of intimidating, so that was a little bit tough. The studies, some of the subjects weren't my favorite, math and some of the sciences. I'm more of a liberal arts kind of guy, so probably the studies and just getting used to that kind of environment.
Alright. So like you were saying when you went to that little Votech up there,
Yeah.
you think without that little experience, this wouldn't?
No, it's one of the miracles, and there have been several kind of miracle mileposts along my journey to get here, and that was one of them. I kind of just went because it was a chance to get out of class. When I went on the tour there, I just went with a couple buddies, and we figured that would be. Can we keep studio audio down just for a couple minutes?
He's good. He's good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, ask me again. We do this all the time, by the way.
So like you were saying when you went to the Votech, without that little experience, do you think you would be here right now?
Danny, I don't think so. I think it was one of the kind of what I call miracle mileposts in my life to get me to this job, which I've enjoyed for so much for so long. We just went because it was a chance to get out of class for the afternoon to go tour this place, and I saw it, and this light came on. And before then, if you'd asked me what I want to do for a living, I had no idea. And that day, I went, I want to do this. So, but for that tour, you know, of Votech and then the Votech being there and stuff, I don't think I would have ended up in this job.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you. Great questions. And good luck with you, your career, and hope it all goes well. All right. That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.